In a world where acceptance and understanding should be the norm, hate still lurks in the shadows, waiting to destroy lives. Today, we dive into a case that shook Newport Beach, California. A story that reminds us how prejudice can turn deadly in an instant. For more stories like this one, visit therealcrimediary.com. 19-year-old Blaise Bernstein had everything going for him. A bright student at the University of Pennsylvania, a talented writer, and a young man finally embracing his true identity. But during a winter break visit home in 2018, a meeting with a former high school classmate would lead to an unthinkable tragedy, fueled by hatred and intolerance. Blaise Bernstein was the kind of person who lit up every room he entered. A sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania, he was thriving as a psychology major and serving as managing editor of the campus cookbook. His passion for food and writing merged beautifully in his role at Pen Appetit magazine, where his creativity flourished. Friends described him as brilliant, funny, and genuinely kind to everyone he met. Growing up in Newport Beach, California, Blaise had always stood out for his intellectual curiosity and artistic talents. He was an accomplished chef, blessed with a beautiful singing voice, and dreamed of attending medical school after college. As a young gay, Jewish man, he had recently begun living his truth more openly, supported by a loving family and wide circle of friends who celebrated his authenticity. When he returned home for winter break in January 2018, Blaise was in high spirits. He had plans to meet up with old friends, spend time with his family, and enjoy the California sunshine before heading back to campus. His mother recalls how excited he was to share new recipes he'd developed and talk about his plans for the future. Like any college student home for the holidays, he was navigating that beautiful space between his childhood home and his emerging adult life, full of promise and possibility. On the night of January 2nd, 2018, Blaise received a message from Samuel Woodward, a former high school classmate. They agreed to meet up, with Woodward picking Blaise up from his parents' house around 11 p.m. What should have been a casual late-night meetup between old classmates would tragically become Blaise's final moments. The two drove to Borrego Park in Lake Forest, a quiet suburban area where many local teenagers would often hang out. Hours passed and Blaise didn't return home. His family, immediately sensing something was wrong, reported him missing the next morning. Their worry turned to desperation as days went by without any sign of their son. After an exhaustive 6-day search, investigators made a heartbreaking discovery. Blaise's body was found in a shallow grave at the edge of the park, partially hidden by brush. The brutal nature of the crime shocked even seasoned investigators. Blaise had been stabbed 28 times, primarily in his neck and upper torso. The rain that had fallen in the days following his disappearance had actually helped preserve crucial evidence at the scene. Text messages revealed that Woodward had carefully planned the meetup, choosing a secluded location late at night. The premeditated nature of the crime became even more apparent as investigators uncovered digital evidence showing Woodward had extensively researched how to dispose of a body and clean a crime scene. What happened in those final moments at the park would later be disputed in court, but the violence and hatred behind the attack was undeniable. As investigators dug deeper into Samuel Woodward's background, a disturbing pattern of extremist beliefs emerged. Digital forensics revealed his active involvement with Atomwaffen Division, a violent neo-Nazi organization known for targeting minorities, Jews, and LGBTQ+ individuals. His computer and phone contained thousands of pieces of anti-Semitic and homophobic content, painting a clear picture of deep-seated hatred. The breakthrough in the case came when DNA evidence recovered from the crime scene matched Woodward's profile. When questioned, Woodward's story kept changing. First, he claimed he had merely dropped Blaise off at the park. Then, he alleged self-defense, saying Blaise had made unwanted advances. But the physical evidence told a different story. The savage nature of the attack, with 28 stab wounds, suggested an act of explosive hatred rather than defense. Investigators discovered Woodward had been planning to flee. He had packed bags ready and was in communication with other Atomwaffen members about relocating. In his online conversations, he had expressed violent fantasies about hurting gay and Jewish people, making statements that would later prove crucial in establishing the hate crime enhancement. The most chilling aspect of the investigation was how Woodward had maintained a facade of normalcy while harboring such extreme views. Former classmates described him as quiet but unremarkable. Yet behind this ordinary exterior lurked someone who had become radicalized through online extremist communities. Someone who had allowed hatred to consume him to the point of murder. The investigation revealed that Woodward had specifically targeted Blaise, knowing he was both gay and Jewish. He had used their past connection as classmates to lure Blaise to an isolated location, betraying the trust of someone who likely saw him as nothing more than an old-school acquaintance. The premeditation and calculation behind the crime painted a picture not of a crime of passion, but of calculated, hate-driven murder. The trial of Samuel Woodward stretched across 3 grueling months, revealing layer upon layer of chilling evidence. In a shocking move during the proceedings, Woodward took the stand and claimed he had entered a state of panic after Blaise allegedly touched him sexually in the park. He testified that he believed Blaise might have been recording him, which triggered him to pull out a knife. But the prosecution painted a vastly different picture. Senior Deputy District Attorney Jennifer Walker methodically laid out evidence of premeditation, showing the jury how Woodward's involvement with the neo-Nazi group Atomwaffen Division and his documented hatred of gay and Jewish people pointed to a calculated hate crime. She revealed how Woodward had already packed his bags and made arrangements with other extremist members to flee after the murder. Defense attorney Ken Morrison conceded his client's guilt in the homicide, but fought against the hate crime enhancement. He argued that the killing was spontaneous and irrational rather than motivated by hate, urging the jury to consider a lesser charge. However, the physical evidence told its own story. 28 stab wounds spoke of an attack fueled by rage rather than fear. After careful deliberation, the jury reached their verdict on July 3rd. They found Woodward guilty of first-degree murder with the hate crime enhancement. The verdict meant Woodward would face life in prison without the possibility of parole. The jury's decision sent a clear message that hate-motivated violence would face the fullest extent of the law. The hate crime enhancement proved crucial, not just for the sentence but for acknowledging the broader significance of the crime. It recognized that Woodward hadn't just taken a life. He had committed an act of terror against entire communities, targeting Blaise for both his Jewish faith and his sexual orientation. The most heart-wrenching moments of the sentencing hearing came during the victim impact statements, where Blaise's loved ones shared their devastating loss. His mother, Jean Pepper, stood before the court with unwavering strength, though her voice trembled with emotion. She painted a vivid picture of her son, handsome, accomplished, and universally loved. A young man who excelled at everything he attempted, making his violent end all the more tragic. Through tears, she recounted the horror of those dark days when Blaise was missing, followed by the soul-crushing moment of identifying his body. The trauma of having to choose a grave for her 19-year-old son, a task no parent should ever face. When she learned of the 28 stab wounds, she collapsed, screaming in anguish. The loss of her firstborn, her partner in fun, her dream for the future, had shattered her world completely. She spoke of Blaise's incredible talents, his gift for cooking, his beautiful singing voice, his passion for writing, of the medical career that would never be realized. But even in her grief, she remained resolute in her commitment to honor his memory through action, vowing to continue working toward a world that's safer and more accepting for Jewish and LGBTQ communities. Blaise's father, Gideon Bernstein, spoke of the darkness that had descended upon their family, while his godmother, Hilary Gerber, emphasized how not a single day passes without the weight of his absence. The raw pain in their voices served as a stark reminder that hate crimes create ripples of trauma that extend far beyond the immediate victim, touching entire families and communities. Through their powerful words, they transformed Blaise from a statistic into a beloved son, friend, and promising young man whose light was extinguished far too soon. Their statements stood as a testament not only to their loss, but to the urgent need to confront the hatred that fueled this senseless crime. Yet in the midst of this darkness, we find hope in the unwavering strength of the Bernstein family, who have transformed their grief into action. Their commitment to creating a more accepting world honors Blaise's memory and challenges each of us to stand against hate in all its forms. For an in-depth look at this case and others like it, along with resources for supporting affected communities and combating hate crimes, visit therealcrimediary.com. Together, we can work toward a future where no other family has to endure such a devastating loss at the hands of hatred and prejudice. Hey listeners, welcome back to The Real Crime Diary. I'm your host, Sean Dupree. If you tuned in last time, we had a deep dive into the disturbing history of power abuse across different eras, looking at the connection between dominance, control, and how it plays out even today. We touched on scandals from the past and compared them with some modern-day examples, showing how these patterns of abuse, unfortunately, persist. One of the most insightful tools we've explored to understand this is my book, Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's not just a historical account, but an interdisciplinary approach to understanding why this keeps happening. We draw from history, philosophy, and modern case studies to explain how figures like Dominique Pellico, Harvey Weinstein, and others have exploited their positions of power for their own gain, often protected by the very systems meant to stop them. Recap of last interaction. In our last live stream, we discussed how libertinism, philosophically introduced by figures like Marquis de Sade, has shaped the way power and pleasure have been entangled throughout history. This concept ties directly into how figures like Weinstein operated, as we saw parallels between de Sade's fictional characters and the way powerful men manipulated their victims in real life. You guys had some amazing comments, asking how societal structures have allowed these behaviors to go unchecked for so long. It's a crucial question, and one that the book addresses deeply. Why this book is valuable. Now, what's powerful about Power, Pleasure, and Pain is its ability to break down these historical patterns and link them to the present. You're not just reading about ancient Rome or Enlightenment philosophy, you're seeing how these ideologies are alive today. The book uncovers how sexual violence and control have been systematically woven into the fabric of societies from ancient times right up to the modern era. It's about understanding not just the individual predators, but the systems that protect them. Whether it's in royal courts, religious institutions, or today's corporate and entertainment worlds. Through these historical lenses, we also explore movements like #MeToo that are beginning to dismantle these structures. The fight for justice is far from over, but as the book demonstrates, we are in the midst of a cultural shift where legal reforms are finally addressing these long-standing issues. It's more than a history lesson. It's a guide to understanding and supporting change today. What's next? If you want to dive deeper, I suggest picking up Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's available now, and trust me, it will change the way you think about power, pleasure, and control. We've even got some exclusive content coming up on the channel where we'll be exploring the book's case studies in even more detail, so stay tuned for that. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to The Real Crime Diary so you don't miss any updates. Let's keep this conversation going, because understanding the past is key to changing the future.